are. So we are going to sing, and now Janine is going to lead us in our welcoming song. And Janine, I forgot to hit, can you hit record? Because I'm in this full screen. Great. Thanks.
All right. So you all can sing from your place. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here.
So let's just take that for a moment, those words. And let's honor the fact that as God's children, our soul is always being invited to be welcome, to be fully present. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, our soul is welcome. My soul is welcome. And as we embrace that idea, let's expand that to that idea that all souls are welcome. So many right now might feel that they are unwelcome based on their race or their gender, or their sexual identity, their status perhaps. And so let's affirm for them in that center of our heart space that all souls are welcome. All souls. May they know that. At the depth of their being, may we know that. May every encounter in our lives bring within us that knowing and to give that as a gift to those we meet. Our soul is welcome. So let's, in that consciousness, let's begin with prayer. So taking a deep breath and allowing ourselves to sink into this moment and this awareness that we are all connected, one mind, one heart, one breath. As we come together in consciousness and prayer, and using the delightful name for God that Father Richard Rohr uses, we pray, "Oh, great love. Thank you for living and loving in us and through us. May all that we do flow from our deep connection to you and all beings. Listen to our heart's longings for the healing of our world as we open to the infinite field of compassion, wisdom, justice, peace, and radiant well-being that is always available. And so from this place of conscious oneness, we choose to live in your flow. And we offer our prayers in all the holy names of God. Amen and amen. So again, welcome. And just a couple notes. I said this, but in case anybody's joined us late, that if you're not in speaker view, and that's at the top right hand of your corner, if you're on a tablet, it works by phone, it's automatic that you'll get speaker view. But someone said last week that they saw everybody during the whole thing. And just a reminder that you can always turn off your video so that if you need to get up or to move around or do something, but you'll see the whole screen here, including the words and things.
Can I say one thing about
Yes.
that too?
Mm-hmm.
Just when we record it, we're recording in a mode that only includes the speaker view, which is Barbara and myself. So, you know, you won't be in that recording if anyone had any concerns about that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so we're going to start again with music from Janine to lead us into our lesson today.
Okay, so this is a song that presented itself to me kind of late last night, actually. It's new to me. It's called "The Only Way Through Is In," and it's by Carrie Newcomer. And Carrie has graciously given me permission to use her music this summer, which has been really nice. So this song stood out to me because it seems to really connect to the times that we're in, that we're facing, where we're dealing with a lot of challenges. And this song is about walking through it, and also walking, the way to get through it is to walk in it as well. So and that's how, you know, when we do that, then we have the opportunity to rise and be transformed. But we can't we can't just push it away. We've got to move through it. So, all right. So this is called "The Only Way Through Is In." Can't get over it, you can't get round it, you can't go under it. I know because I've tried, checking the walls on every side. And if I could pray or do this any other way, I would have done it a long time ago. The only way out is through, but the only way through is in, where the soft soul waits and the heartbeat breaks, and the real wars are waged and won by some. This runaway train in a well-worn brain, more of the same can't be sustained anymore. So I walked in through that door, and it felt like dying, but it feels like trying, yet I'm still only halfway there. And the only way out is through, but the only way through is in again, where it's hard as stone and close to the bone, where real wars are waged and won. I think that you might be the bravest soul I'll ever meet anywhere. Just sitting in that chair with shaking hands, I saw you make your stand, and I believe you can, you can. The only way out is through, but the only way through is in again, where the soft soul waits and hearts beat and break, and the real wars are waged and won.
Thank you, Janine. I have to breathe deeply of those words. The only way is through it. And right now, as we've talked last Sunday about the fact that we are in a rapidly changing time right now. And I don't know about you, but when I look back at the way I was raised to go around it or deny it. As children, we weren't told about really how to be resilient and how to work with change. I think of when my grandparents died when I was a little child, we didn't even go to the memorial. We didn't talk about what it felt. And yet my mom was so sad all the time. But it was all this, we didn't learn about the courage that comes and the transformation that comes from moving through our most difficult times and having this great compassion for ourselves, and thereby, and we spoke about this last Sunday, as we have this compassion for what's happening right now in our world, and we learn these skills of moving through change in a way that brings forth a gift, we not only serve ourselves, but we serve the world. That's a pretty tall order now that things feel a bit chaotic. And if we can get like this higher view and look we'd understand that out of chaos, if we look through history, comes creation. We'd also see that our world has gotten much smaller. You kind of hear people say, we're in a bubble, like each of us are in this bubble and we live in our own little neighborhoods in our own. And I would suggest that that my bubble has burst and a lot of people's bubble has burst, that technology and ways of communicating, I know more right now about the world than I've ever known. And a bunch of us are bumping up against each other with our ideas. And that is chaos, because people from all different backgrounds that maybe we've never spoken with or related to are suddenly in the media and the news. When I was a kid, there were 3 channels to watch on TV, and pretty much the newscasters were very much in the middle and the same. And now you have this large variety of opinions coming. And out of that is some polarization. But can we understand that there's something bigger in that what is happening is, as we're having an accelerated trauma that we talked about last week, we're also having an accelerated awakening. So this whole 10-week series is about what do we do with both that trauma and awakening to allow ourselves, as Janine said, to move through it rather than hide from it, to find ourselves overeating, overwatching TV, or doing anything rather than allowing it to move and transform us at a deep level. So the thing we said last Sunday that has really stuck with me is watching the world from this point of view of what's being revealed so that it can be healed. And the revealing is like taking a deep breath, all the different things that are being revealed from the people that are serving us in our that are essential workers, from the fact that I thought I understood a lot about racism, and I realized I hardly knew anything. And so all this revealing is allowing this amazing opportunity. And we talked last week about the fact that when things change, it's like a death in a way that we have to let go, and we have a lot of resistance. And as we move through that experience, we might experience grief, and to love ourselves through that grief. We're using the book, it's called Finding Yourself in Transition, and it's in the notes we'll be sending on Monday, along with the link for our YouTube channel. And he talks about transition as often comes when there is crisis. And I want to read a little from what Robert Brummett says. And I want to tell you a little about Robert Brummett anyhow. He's a unity minister. He's a psychologist. He teaches Vipassana yoga, and he is a transformative speaker of what's going on. And this was written quite a while ago, like 20 years ago, and yet it speaks as if it were written today. And so these transitions, he writes, he says, may be uncomfortable, may be an uncomfortable time, yet it is always a meaningful time. It is a time when the old order of our life is disrupted. It is a time when our old way of being is disturbed. It may even be a time when our sense of reality is challenged. Though painful, these can be extremely significant times in our lives. Times of transition are wonderful opportunities to gain strength and wisdom, opportunities to experience spiritual breakthroughs and healings. Transition may provide the breakthrough necessary to live an entirely different life, not just the old life in a new way, but an entirely new life. And he mentions in the book that the word crisis that often comes and forces us, maybe kicking and screaming, into transition, in the Chinese language, it's represented by a character made up of two things, and it's represented by opportunity and danger. And so I was thinking about that and thinking, okay, so what are some of the opportunities we have right now that are presenting ourselves to ourselves and to our world, to our country, and to us individually? And then what's the danger in that? And the opportunities, some of the most recent things I saw in the news was that we are rewriting history. We are looking at the history of the United States, and this is no small thing. A country feels good about itself and is patriotic by its story. What is that base story? And part of it's mythology. I mean, some of our story, every country has this. If you look around the world and you study different countries, you notice there is this story about who we are. And now, right now, it's getting what? Pulled apart, is it not? Parts of it are saying, you know, is this who we really want to be? Is this what we want to raise up as that story, that mythology about who we are? And so we're looking, and we're kind of in this empty place of going, well, what's our story? because our story is important. And the danger there is getting stuck in this fight over that story. Not realizing that a new story can be empowering, and looking so at some of the old things that maybe it's time for us to release. There's a study called Spiral Dynamics, and what it talks about is the evolution of consciousness, and it's a really profound understanding of the world. And basically it says that we're on a spiral and we're lifting all the time at a slight new awareness, a slight more of compassion, of wisdom as we go on. But as each turn of the spiral, as we change into this new higher consciousness, there is a group that this is very fearful, and that's the danger. There's this pullback of, and can we be resilient enough to, during the pullback, and I think we're seeing some of that in our country right now, this fight over who we are, can we be resilient enough and keep that vision of where we're going, and at the same time include those that are pulling back, to embrace them in compassion and understanding, and eventually even dialogue. So in spiral dynamics, they call this, it's called the spiral wizard. And I just love it. It's the idea that there are all these levels of consciousness, and the spiral wizard is something we can move towards, where we look at all the different levels of consciousness and we can say, can I include this and lift it? Can I include it and lift it? So that's the idea of crisis right now. Rather than saying, oh my gosh, we're in crisis, is this an opportunity to look at that there is potential in this crisis? There is an amazing potential we have yet to see totally. We're only seeing pieces of it. And can we be the spiral wizards that go and look at that without blame and polarization, but like, whoa, what is my consciousness that helps everyone, our places on the spiral? And there are people that are above me on the spiral that are lifting me, and there are people that are still struggling with some of the new awarenesses and openness that I've come to. And so no, it's kind of like a ladder, and somebody's reaching and I'm reaching for them and they're pulling me, and there's somebody with me that I'm pulling too into a new compassionate understanding. And so Robert Brummett goes on to say, this is from Jean Houston, and it talks about the crisis and the suffering that's part of that. And as Janine said in the song, walking through that. And so here's what Jean Houston says: in times of suffering, when you feel abandoned, have any of you felt that? I've felt at different things that have happened, perhaps even annihilated, there is occurring at levels deeper than your pain, the entry of the sacred. Wow, hear that. At levels deeper than our pain in this country right now, the pain we're feeling, there is entry in the sacred, the possibility of redemption. Wounding opens the doors of our sensibility to a larger reality, which is blocked to our habituated and conditioned point of view. And she uses the word pathos, meaning suffering, gives us eyes and ears to see and hear what our normal eyes and ears cannot. Okay, so this week, I was watching, I mentioned last week, and again, I'll have her website on it, Tara Brach, who's a Buddhist. And she posted this YouTube video that I'm going to switch to, that for me was the exact example of this paragraph of that suffering. There's this amazing gift in suffering. So I'm going to share my screen right now with this video.
we had done this a week ago, I probably couldn't have been a part of it just because there was so much heartbreak. I think the world saw something that's been happening in our country for centuries. Saw a black man lynched by a white man. That's what that was, that video. And it broke us. It broke the black community to watch something like that happen. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. He starts calling out for his mother. His mother's been dead for years. 6 minutes, urinating on himself, begging for his life. 15 times, I can't breathe. The community screaming in horror. 8 minutes, 46 seconds. These videos have been a part of American life now for almost 7 to 8 years. It was always, oh, well, it was a quick decision and Cuff's got to defend himself. He was talking back, he was fighting back. What do you want? What do you expect? You can't second guess the police. But this one, filmed from beginning to end, stunned the world. And for all of the times that we have been lynched, we've never had a situation where 1 billion people could see it all at the same time on their smartphones. And it shoved a piece of glass into the eyeball of everybody on the planet, and it hurt them. People couldn't sleep having seen it. They couldn't rest. And if we had tried to have this conversation a week ago, we probably couldn't have it. But a miracle is taking place. A miracle is taking place. A continent of new common ground has emerged from beneath the waves, where there are 20, 30, 40 million white Americans saying racism is real, more real than I thought. There's something wrong with our justice system. It's more broken than I knew. What can I do about it? As an African American man, it's a miracle. It's all I've wanted. It's an acknowledgement that what is happening, and that we need to do something about it. And now we're in the middle of something we don't know what it is. We don't even have a name for it. You know, the civil rights movement wasn't called the civil rights movement at the beginning. At first, it was just people trying to fix a problem. And later on, they called it the civil rights movement. We don't know what this is. NASCAR says they're not going to let Confederate flags fly anymore. The NFL is apologizing for not supporting Colin Kaepernick's peaceful protests years ago when he was trying to call attention to this. You have people, corporations across the world saying Black Lives Matter. What is this? We don't know what to call this. 1964, they called it Freedom Summer when those students went south to register voters. Some were killed, some were beaten, but they changed history. But they didn't call it Freedom Summer then. They called it was 2 years later when a book came out called Freedom Summer. They didn't know they were in Freedom Summer. So we're in some awakening, some great awakening, where much more is possible than we had dared to hope for. Somebody killed a Black man, and everybody cares. Miracle. Never happened. Never happened. Somebody killed a Black man, and everybody cares. I wish my parents were here. Do this.
Okay, deep breath. I've seen this now 3 times, and it almost makes me speechless. I can feel that we're at a tipping point, that a miracle is happening, that somebody cares, that lots of somebodies of us care. As Van Jones said, there's an awakening, a deep, deep awakening that's happening. And it's painful. Did you hear him say how painful it was for him? How painful it is for our brothers and sisters. And it, Cahill Gibran, the poet, the Sufi poet, said, pain is the breaking open of the shell that encloses your understanding. Pain is the breaking open. So our country is breaking open, and we're at a place where our not only compassion, but our resilience to that. How do I become, that's what I ask myself a lot, is how do I become resilient to do what is mine to do? And I don't exactly know all of it yet. Parts of it are coming to me. I'm sitting with it and moving to a place of great compassion and love to do that. Later this week, it's just like, when you're thinking about things like this, stuff comes to you. And I was watching the PBS nightly news, and it's at 7 on our PBS station, and Wednesday night on July 1st. And I don't know if any of you might have seen or follow David Brooks. He's a columnist for the New York Times, and he was at Chautauqua, I think it was the summer before last, not last, but the summer before. He got an amazing standing ovation because not only is he a columnist, but he looks at how to live in integrity. And he's on this journey, and he talked about it a couple of years ago, and he was interviewed, and I'm going to put the clip in the notes so that you can watch this interview, because I tracked it down because I wanted to hear it again. And he was interviewed on something called Race Matters. They have this little section, I guess, once a week where they talk about race. And he's a white man. And he goes and visits through a project called Weave. And he goes and talks to people out in communities all over to see what's going on and report back. And as he's being interviewed about this, he's saying, there are so many good things happening out there that are weaving together communities. And he gives all these pictures and examples of that at the very base level. Communities aren't as polarized as the view we often get from our news and things. And he pointed out places in Watts where people came together, a group, to transform their community. And he said, all these people at the ground level know how to heal us. That this is a ground up experience, that we are being called as our neighbors. And he talked about how more and more as he goes into communities, he talks and the person will say, yes, and my neighbor did this. And yes, we helped here, or we sent money here, or I listened to somebody who had a loss. This week was the first time that I've known people with COVID. And I have not seen, one was from my church, one of our chaplains, who has a heart that is so big, it just holds our whole church. And I'm in prayer with him and his friends about this process that he's going through. And I can just feel that my heart's going deeper as I become more and more aware of that around me, that I can use my potential to send out and experience and help with this compassionate movement of weaving. So this Sunday, we're talking about rites of passage. And part of getting to this place is to understand what we're going through. And in this book on finding yourself in transition, he talks about, Robert Brummett talks about these major parts that as we're making a change, we will experience. We talked last week a little about grief, that we feel grief, that there's this ending in our lives. And in that ending is not only an experience of grief, but this longing to want to pull things back. And right now we're in that place of wanting things to have an answer, like, oh, if only we could be on the other side of this, right? But after the ending comes this place called the void. And I feel like we're just, while things are ending and still in the process of ending, because nothing is clear cut on these 3 stages. He says we can go back and forth. So things are ending or changing, and then there's a void. And in that void is that opportunity for us. We can either go down this be just miserable and just say, oh, this is the worst, and I am not participating in life and I'm withdrawing. Or we can see the potential in a change in consciousness in us for a new beginning. And for the next, we have 8 more weeks, we're going to be looking at those steps in depth. Starting next week with Reverend Jessie James, she'll be talking to us in depth about what it feels like to move into the endings. And then Robert Brummett talks about the fact that what helps us through these times are what he calls rites of passage, which is what we're talking about today. And rites of passage, if you think about it, you've probably heard about it from maybe Joseph Campbell. If you followed any of his work, you understand that there is a ritual in which we become an initiate in a new way of being. And part of that is that we separate ourselves for a while from the way we've looked at life, perhaps even from our community. If you look at the ancient Greeks and Romans and things, they actually had initiations where people actually go off. And I was thinking about our culture, unless you've decided to be a nun or a priest or something, often we don't set ourselves a time for that separation. And then during that time of separation, we have an initiation into a new understanding, and then we come into a return to with a new understanding. And in that return, we bring a gift to the world. And so, okay, so I'm reading this and thinking, I don't remember many rituals in my life that created a space for that. Often it's called a vision quest. And even, then I thought about the Bible, and I thought, Jesus went through that. He went through a rites of passage. They say, there's in Mark, it says that he goes out into the wilderness, and you might remember the story, 40 days and 40 nights. And the first thing to understand is that the Hebrews, when they wrote about things, they used numbers that had a sacred meaning for them. So 40 wasn't literally 40, because all through the Bible, the number 40 is used over and over again, especially in the Hebrew, or what we call the Old Testament. But 40 represents the time it takes to have a breakthrough. So anytime we have our 40-day experience, it's an experience that we have to sit through. And for me, the way I interpret this is it's kind of like us facing our ego, our shadow. Like if we've made our ego in charge of our lives rather than that higher place, because our ego is a servant to what we call in unity our Christ self, or that higher understanding of the world. So, but often the easier way to power in things and to getting, quote, things and to keeping safe is to empower the ego to over control our lives and over control other people's lives and go on a power trip so that we can feel comfortable. Because after all, there is our primitive brain that had to deal, that it still jumps in there when things, and right now some things feel pretty threatening, like the COVID virus, or changes maybe in what we're going to see out of this economically. So there's that temptation, but there's also this opportunity, like Jesus says, and it says that he goes and confronts the devil. And to me, the devil is, again, that shadow part of us that hasn't been brought compassionately to the light. And so the devil tempts him by saying, gee, you know, you have so much power, you could turn stones into bread. And what's that about? You could create prosperity in your life, not through the consciousness of love and flow, but that just using a full force of power. And we see that in our world. That does work, doesn't it? As some people are very able to create things, whether that makes them happy or not I would say is a big question. But so Jesus goes through this time of looking at that, and then this devil, this shadow part of him, before, and realize that he's doing this before he goes out in ministry. He's doing this cleansing process, and the next offering is, oh, you know what? You are so powerful, the devil says in this dialogue, that you could jump off a building, off the temple, and the angels would just come to your rescue. So what's that about? That's an ego thing where we could just feel so, you know, that idea of our self-esteem is not built on our spiritual natures, but it's built on how we can show off to the world, from, and it's a temptation all the time, from the clothing to our status to all the ways that we can show up. So Jesus was looking at that and calling again every time that's part of him offers this to him. He says, no, the God of my being is my source, the God of my being. And the temptation is that he can have, if he worships the devil, he can have power over the whole world. He can rule the world. And that's something we can watch the news and see that happening. That there is a power to do that, but is it a lasting power? Is it one that doesn't eventually, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, you know, the arc of justice is very slow, right? But it moves all, or the arc of, I forgot the words now, but the arc of change moves slow. Or the arc of justice, I think it is move slow but it always comes to that place of wholeness and healing, but it's slow. So we can jump into these. And so Jesus then says, like Mary said, he says that same thing, get thee behind me, get this idea, God is this place. And so then I wondered, okay, so when have I gone apart? And I did do with Robert Brumman when I was in ministerial school. He was one of my teachers. I did do a Vipassana time with him in total silence. When the monkey mind was at its best, it was a miserable experience. All I can say is it was miserable. All my monkey mind thoughts, because after all, we were going into ministry, and Robert wanted us to understand that we were going to face some things in ministry, lack of funds and people who had a different agenda than the wholeness and healing experience. And that if we didn't look at this ego part of us, and as a country now, we're that same place, we've got to examine this ego part of us to take this next step. And it was hard, and I don't think I did very good at that. But then I thought later, I did this book, and this was before I did ministerial school. It's 20 some years ago, and it was called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron, and maybe some of you have done it. It's a 12-week process. I was working in the corporation at this time, and it changed my whole life. And I'm not an artist in any way. I'm not like Janine, no musical talent, no poetry. I don't even like to write, or you'd think I would as a minister. However, the artist's way is more than that. It's about unleashing that creative experience that is pushed down. And one of the things you had to do, you began with, was called your daily pages, your morning pages. And I would start at 5:30 in the morning before I got to work, and you just mind dump, like, oh, and my first mind dump was, I don't want to write these pages. I don't want to do this. This is silly. This is of no value. And I'm doing this every morning for 12 weeks. And eventually I get to a place where I know I've been called to ministry. I had gotten this in meditation, but I'm writing about it. I just can't believe this. I can't do this. I am not good at this. And all of a sudden I'm writing, but I am. And I'm going, who's this voice? And it says, I can do this. No, you can't. That's okay. You can't do this. And I realized this was my rite of passage. Like, I had spent these 12 weeks, and each week was taking apart a piece of me that had a dialogue about, I can't. And I finally got to, I will. And all of us have these amazing rites of passage. And so then I was thinking about, what's the most recent one? And some of my friends on will know this because they've done it with me, and it's called a crone ceremony. At 60 years old, we take our women's group, and we are now all past 60 by a ways. Not that I'm giving away any of our ages, but the crone ceremony, we would go to the beach and we'd take the person whose birthday it was, their 60th birthday, and we would hold them in this place through poetry and song and vision. We would hold that this was a new rites of passage for them. Now, I know a lot of you joining me are probably getting near this age where you're thinking about this. Well, what am I supposed to do now? And I get really excited about the idea of a crone or a wise man and a wise woman. We could substitute those words. We are at the age now where maybe we are physically keeping ourselves restricted because of the virus or things like that, but we can be the wisdom. That is the point. And so we held for this person whose birthday it is, we each would not only read to them and tell them about the gifts they brought to us, but we also told them about the gifts, and that we would hold the high watch for them, that they would be in our love. And this group is still together. Like we said, 1994. Mary told us that we started in 1994, holding ourselves to this vision for each other. And so I was realizing, how do I do that now as a grandparent? As calling up my friends to talk to them, as we serve in a way. There are rites of passage that our aging are just perfect for. It's an amazing time and potential for us to be that light in the midst of this. So I want to end with this thing from Viktor Frankl. And I don't know, you may have read his book. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a tearjerker. It's one like listening to Van Jones. He was in a Holocaust camp where he lost his wife, where all these different people died in his life, where he watched his fellow prisoners die one by one. And he found a place of resilience inside of himself. And it's the most amazing story, because I would say, I don't think I would have found that. I'm not sure even today with all the spiritual, could have I found what he found. And what he saw amongst himself and the people, that when the American troops came to free them, he's a German, and he is a psychiatrist, a famous psychiatrist, by the way. And he found that those that survived had survived because they had meaning. And remember when we just talked a little about our country is looking for a new meaning, a new story? Well, the people that survived had a story. They had a story of not who the guards said they were, not who this outer world said they were, but who they were. And these are the things he says that make up meaning in our lives. So he says that the work that we offer, that maybe that wise man and wise woman that we offer in times of crisis give us meaning. The love that we give in times of crisis and change give us meaning. Our ability to display courage in the face of suffering. And to me, that means to hear others, to listen to other people's suffering, to support their process through it, especially those our friends of color. To hold that understanding. And finally, what story are we going to tell about this moment? So as we move into a time of meditation, let's just remember Van Jones's words that a miracle is taking place. This is our new story. It's a possibility for us that each of us here could tell this, that a great awakening is happening. And then finally, he said, if you remember his words, and we're in this together, you and I are in this together as we meditate.
I breathe in, I breathe out, I take in, I give out, I let love, I let go, I release, I know, I forgive, I receive, I can feel, I believe, I am healed, I am whole, I release, I know. Breathe, breathe, breathe. No need to push, no need to try, no need to worry or question why. Surrender, let go, release and know. Breathe, breathe.
And so as we enter a time of meditation, you may wish to put your hand on your heart and just notice how you breathe. Allowing yourself to sink deep into this moment of breath. The thing that we all share, each of us coming together, our breath. The word spirit means breath. So with each breath, we understand that spirit is breathing us. And feel that love of spirit breathing you. The compassion filling you with each breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Taking in the gifts of spirit. Giving out. Gently, lovingly, giving out this gift with each breath. Again, the breath, allowing that love to flow. As we surrender into this moment of release, of knowing, that spirit breathes us and opens us to the story that is ours. So that we move into that flow of giving and receiving. Seeing in this time of change, the changeless. So breathe now. Breathe in the silence. Again, we breathe in and we breathe out. We take in and we take out the gifts of spirit. Loving this gift, loving this moment into wholeness. And so it is. Amen and amen.
I breathe in, I breathe out, I take in, I give out, I let love, I let go, I release and know. Breathe, breathe. Breathe.
Thank you, Janine. And so as we conclude our service, this is our time of our offering. And even though we're not in person and we've created this online community, I still want us to go through that process of allowing this gift to know this gift is flowing through us. And so if you would say this with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and I am grateful. You are that gift to the world. So again, Janine is going to lead us in our blessing song.
I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed, I am so blessed. I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed.
Thank you, Janine. And as we're about to say our prayer, unity prayer protection, I just want to note that somebody asked me that if they could give to what we're doing, and you can. You'll notice on your email, there's a place you can send a check. We're still working on that part of having something that you can press online since we've just moved online so recently. But we appreciate those gifts. They go to supporting all the unity ministers we bring to Chautauqua. And so now I'd like us to join together and say our unity prayer of protection. And just to remind you that I said this last week, that this prayer is sitting on the moon by Buzz Aldrin, actually put on the moon. And this morning I was walking my dog around 6 a.m. and the moon was just peeked out of this giant cloud that had lightning coming out of it. And the moon, and I thought, oh my goodness, this prayer, it's looking down at me. So that was my insight for this unity prayer. So together we say this: the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so it is. And blessed Sunday. I am so grateful for each of you being here and seeing your faces and you sharing this experience as we're discovering what's changing and what's changeless. So blessings to everyone. And I'm hoping to see, next week we'll have Reverend Jessie. I just can't wait for you to meet her. She did ministry a couple years with me while my parents were really sick. She helped me out in my church, but we knew each other way before that. We've known each other probably 30 years. So she is one of my favorite ministers and I want you to experience her too. So I'll see you next week.